Hello folks and welcome back once again to the channel. My name is The Foreigner and in today's video we are going to see the progress of our first game, which I titled Split It in 60. If this is the first video you're watching of this series, I advise you to check the previous video so you can have an idea of why this game is so bad. You can find the link to that in the description below. To keep it short, I am new to game development and programming in general. And this is my very first try to make a game, without basically knowing what I'm doing. In the previous video, you saw me creating our different squares needed for the game in the software called Aseprite, as well as setting up our game project in the Unity game engine. We got to the point where we imported the squares and were able to destroy them. However, to destroy the squares, we needed to manually drag and drop them into the screen, which doesn't make sense. It's like throwing a ball to yourself. Not that I know how that would feel. But before working on a mechanism that would automatically spawn our squares, we first need to make sure that they spawn in a predefined range. We don't want our squares to spawn outside our field of view. Instead, we want them to spawn directly on our screen so that we can click on them as soon as they spawn. It sounds like an easy task, but that's where I had my first struggle already. As you can see, the squares were randomly spawning on the x-axis, however not on the y-axis. After reviewing my code, I was able to find the mistake, and voila, they are now spawning all over the screen. I found myself murdering the spacebar to spawn endless squares covering the screen. I cannot explain why, but it was oddly satisfying. Just check it out yourself. Back to reality. The squares are not yet spawning automatically. As I was saying, they are called using the spacebar, but nobody wants that. We want them to automatically spawn all over the screen so that the player can completely focus on the destruction of the squares. After rewatching the official Create with Code series from Unity, it was rather simple to make them spawn by themselves. The course also teaches you how to manipulate the spawn rate. So I decided that spawning a square each 10th of a second would be a nice idea to let my girlfriend test the current state of the game. And to be fair, she did quite well. Next on our list was the split mechanic. In my previous video, I explained that each square should split in two, and then in smaller squares again. The idea is that once you destroy the big square, it will split in two. These two pieces represent two halves of the big square, right? And when you split them, two even smaller squares will spawn, which are the ones that will eventually give you points. I managed to implement this mechanic without any major complication. Just a couple of easy to fix bugs, where fewer or more squares were spawning. But after some tweaking, we got that working as well, so that the game currently looks like this. It wouldn't be a game without some sort of progress. In our case, we want to collect points each time we destroy one of the small squares. The points will be shown as a total score on the upper part of the screen. Let me tell you, that took longer than you would expect. I mean, I got it running after 3 hours of checking different tutorials and trying them on my game project. It worked eventually, but I had to go through some trials and errors before it was working the way I wanted it to. I think it's another excellent example of it's always easy as long as it's someone else doing it. This is something I observed so many times in all possible situations, and usually the people who were complaining in the first place end up doing an even worse job than the people they were complaining about. So I try to show my respect and admiration for the people putting all those hours into creating tutorials or content on YouTube, but also for any other professional activity performed in the world. Because even though my mind is trying to trick me into thinking that I could do a better job than someone else, the reality is I probably couldn't. Enough philosophy though for today. We got the score up and running. Let's have a look at it. This means that a big part of our core game mechanic is working properly. I'm not really putting the focus on the code itself in this game, because I don't know yet how to properly code. The most important thing for now is that the project is functional. So far it works, so let's keep it going. To complete the core game mechanic, we need to add a timer, since the player will only have a total of 60 seconds to get as many points as possible. But this is something for the next video. I hope you liked the video. Leave a like if you did, don't if you don't, and subscribe to don't miss the next part. As always, keep safe and see you soon.